Anna, great to talk to you, but an endurance swimmer and something you came to relatively late. Why on earth did you choose such an extreme sport?
Well, it's a very good question. I spent a lot of my life trying to stay on boats and doing everything I could to keep out of the water. But yeah, I was 31 and I read an article about someone swimming across the English Channel. And I guess it just captured my imagination, really. I thought that's an awesome thing to do, to get in the water in Dover and swim to France. And I fancied having a crack at it. So that's what I did.
But you didn't really spend a lot of time preparing because your first time wasn't successful. But, credit to you, you kind of got back on your horse straight away, didn't you?
Well, did I? So I started swimming at the end of one year. I think it was in the December, and I made my first cross channel attempt in the August the following year. So I had about 9 months of preparation. And when I do something, I tend to kind of throw myself at it 100%. So those 9 months were pretty intense. I even gave up alcohol for those 9 months, which for anyone who knows me will know what a big commitment I was making.
Yeah.
But yeah, I huge, absolutely huge, and caffeine. So yeah, no, I was really going for it. But unfortunately, I didn't make it. It's the channel is incredibly tough and unforgiving, and I ended up being pulled out after 14 and a half hours. I was a few miles away from the French coast, but the tide was turning, and it's in a way very lucky they took me out because I ended up being hospitalised afterwards. I lost consciousness on the way back to the UK, and I was like not in a very good state. So after that, I actually spent a year where I didn't get back in the water because I don't know, for me, it really like broke me a little bit, the idea that I'd put everything into it and I had made it. It
Well,
took me,
in fairness, I'm not surprised because for most people to end up trying something and ending up in hospital would be enough to put them off forever. But you
yeah,
did come back.
I did. So I had a year where I didn't get in the water, literally, and then I did get back in, and I made another attempt almost exactly 2 years afterwards, and I made it. It was an incredibly tough swim. It took 21 hours and 20 minutes, and I was really badly stung by jellyfish. We got really thick fog on the approach to the French coast, and I couldn't see my support boat, which was probably 5 or 6 meters away from me. So it
Wow.
was pretty hellish. Yeah, yeah. But I made it, and I got across, and that was kind of the start of where I started kind of doing even more crazy things.
So the success from the channel swim, is that what led to your imagination running wild and coming up with the Five Island swim and then round the Isle of Wight 60-mile non-stop swim? I mean, I remember watching you going beyond 24 hours swimming non-stop and my heart was going out to you. I don't know how you did it.
Yeah, it was tough, all right. I think what happened is getting back in the channel and making it across, having not made it the first time, gave me like some confidence that I didn't have before. Basically, it made me believe that if I actually just continued to work really hard, I would eventually get to achieve what I was setting out to do. And I think there's also something, I love doing things that nobody's ever done before. For me, that's a real personal motivator. It's exciting, pulling together a team and working on the logistics. Yeah, and just working out the tides. As you can well imagine, to swim around the Isle of Wight is no easy feat in terms of the tidal planning. We did so many training swims around the island, trying to time exactly to get to the Needles at the right moment, because if you get to the Needles half an hour too soon, then I end up almost in pool. If I get there 5 minutes too late, I'm not getting around the Needles and I've got to sit out another tide. I swim at 1.2 knots. Consistently, I'll swim that the first hour and the 20th hour. But, if I end up with 1.5 knots of tide against me, that means I'm not going anywhere. So, yeah, for me, that's as much. The planning phase is so interesting, and I work with some like incredibly talented people who work in the marine industry. Who we have a lot of fun in the sort of preparation as much as doing the things.
I can imagine. And if we bring everybody up to the present day, you're not actually resting on your laurels at all. You're taking your endurance swimming to the whole new level. All I can say is congratulations on picking warmer water. So tell everybody about the next challenge.
Okay, so yeah, I decided that I've kind of had enough of getting absolutely freezing cold and losing the feeling in my feet and toes for months on end. So what I'm doing at the moment is I'm training for my Balearic swim challenge. So I am planning to become the first person to ever swim from Menorca in the Mediterranean to mainland Spain. It's 215 kilometers in total, and I'm doing it in three stages. So I'm going to be swimming from Menorca to Mallorca in May, and then from Mallorca to Ibiza in June, and then Ibiza to Denia on the mainland in July. So yeah, I'm doing a lot of training. I'm based out in Mallorca now, doing a lot of training, getting stung a lot by jellyfish at the moment, which is pretty horrendous. But again, it's something that nobody's ever done before. I'm doing it without a wetsuit, and it's a massive challenge. But it's just great to be setting out to do something that's never even been attempted before.
And you always choose to generally swim without a wetsuit, even when you're in crazy Arctic icy waters. What is that decision based on? Why?
I guess I'm a little bit mad, as you well know, but I think it's also based on, for me, it really is me versus the elements. You know, I don't have any outside assistance. I'm past my food in a net. Nobody can touch me. I can't touch anyone. I'm just literally in my regular Lycra swimsuit, cap and goggles. So I'm not getting any sort of thermal help from a wetsuit or the buoyancy. And it is literally just me pitting myself against the elements. So I've got no advantage over someone who was swimming 50 years ago or 100 years ago. And so all the swims I do are under channel swimming rules. So it would make my life a lot easier at some times, especially when there's a lot of jellyfish around to swim in a wetsuit. But yeah, it's the way I've always done it. And bizarrely, I do like the feeling of the water on my skin. It's kind of it makes you feel alive.
And I've got to ask, now we all grew up swimming lessons and swimming as a family, and it's don't eat within an hour of a swim and make sure your food's digested. You're out there for such a long period of time that fueling your body is really important. How on earth do you manage to eat and swim? I'm
Well,
amazed.
that is, I know, it's the key to kind of what I do, really. If I can't eat when I'm swimming for 26 hours, then clearly I'm not going to be able to carry on. And putting fuel in is critical. I'm burning at least 900 calories an hour. So, for example, swimming around the Isle of Wight, I've burned in excess of 27,000 calories. So,
Wow.
despite eating like huge amounts of food, you know, and I eat everything from pasta, risotto, ginger cake, Percy pigs, Tunnock's tea cakes. I eat like a whole variety of food to keep me going. Um, and despite eating all that food every 30 minutes for 26 and a half hours, I still lost a stone in weight in those 26 and a half hours, which it just shows how much energy I'm burning when I'm swimming. And if I can't eat, then I can't keep going. I can't deal with the cold. And it's actually a major factor now with my training and swims in the Mediterranean, because it's so salty that it makes all my throat really swell that I can barely swallow, which means after about 8 or 10 hours, I'm really struggling to swallow food, which obviously is a bit of a showstopper. So we're trying to work out ways that I can get enough nutrition without having any solids at all.
Wow,
Tough.
that's tough. And also the whole like you're training and you're consuming fuel and you get into that routine. And I know even on the Volvo, we were like quite happily eating 5 meals a day. And
Mm.
suddenly you stop doing that and you live normally, and it's really hard habit to break. I have to control myself not to keep
No,
eating
me
at the
too.
same rate. Do you have the
Absolutely. And
same?
it's all, yeah, it's impossible really for me not to. I actually find when I'm swimming, my diet is better because basically I'm eating every 30 minutes. Someone whistles, gives me food, and I eat it. So I have a really consistent kind of eating pattern. Whereas when I'm on shore and I have to fend for myself, I have to kind of work out what I'm going to eat, open the fridge, go to the supermarket, and all that can be a bit challenging. I think I come a bit institutionalized and I wait to hear the whistle and someone to give me something. And it doesn't tend to work like that in my house. So, yeah, that's tough. But
It's
again,
definitely a Pavlov dog system,
it
you know,
is. No,
you're
no, when I
trained and
hear,
you're in.
yeah. When I hear the whistle, my mouth starts watering. But it really is so important. I think people say, how on earth do you eat like that volume and then swim like at that pace for that long? And I think my body now, because I've trained and swam so much, it's become really well attuned at just converting that fuel into energy. And yeah, it works and it keeps me going. And as long as I can keep eating, I can keep swimming. So that's important.
So we know when you're swimming for a long time, eating's the important thing, but it must be quite a lonely environment. I know you've got a team and you've got a support boat, but you're on your own in the water. Do you listen to music when you're training or when you're racing, or how do you talk to yourself? I'm not really sure what you do out there.
Well, I have absolutely no kind of external stimulus because I'm swimming under these strict rules, and I do all my training under the same rules. So it's literally just the cap, goggles, and swimsuit. So no MP3 player or anything like that. I've managed to master this technique of singing to myself without making any noise, which is quite good. It's kind of as effective as listening to music if you really put your mind to it. I go through lots of kind of alphabetical lists of different things, but a lot of it is a visualization. So I'm visualizing like an absolute positive outcome. So say swimming around the Isle of Wight for months and months, I'd been swimming, imagining that swim from the moment I got in at Ryde Pier to the minute I finished, of just the whole thing going smoothly, getting out, imagining the flotilla of boats at the end of the swim gathering around me and people cheering me on. Imagining things like that really like lifts my spirit and keeps me going. So when I'm swimming through the night and it's just me and I've got my support crew when I'm training, if I can kind of think those really positive thoughts, that is what keeps me going. So yeah, there's a mixture of complete inane thoughts, but actually some really like planned positive visualization.
You're going to come out of the water of one swim with like world peace all organized or something. You're going to have come up with it in some moment as it hits you in that tough moment, I can tell.
Do you know, when I finished my swim around the Isle of Wight, so given I'd had like 26 and a half hours to think of something quite profound to say. And the week or a couple of weeks before I did that swim, Diana Nyad, another long distance swimmer, she just completed a swim from Cuba to Florida. And she got out and came out with some pretty profound words about never giving up and chasing your dreams and everything else. And I can't tell you what I actually said when I finished that swim, but I punched the pier in Ryde so hard that I nearly broke my hand, which was my only injury after all those hours of swimming. But the sound guy from the BBC said to me, "I'm really sorry, but we're not going to be able to use any of the audio from your finish," which was fairly obvious because of what I'd said. But it was, yeah, I would never say it in front of my mum, put it that way. It was, given the amount of time I had to plan my kind of glorious speech, I didn't do very well.
Well, memo to self for the end of the next one. Make sure you just nail the right words that come out your mouth in the right order. But I've got to ask, the swimming that you're doing is all open water. Your training is in open water and as light conditions as possible. Do you ever go into the pool to do any training at all?
Not really. I avoid it at all costs because, well, not at all costs because it's a very different discipline, swimming in the pool. So I do go in the pool if I'm trying to do very specific training to increase my pace, for example, where you've got to be very aware of your speed over short distances. Where I live in Mallorca, I live 2 blocks away from one of the best training facilities on the planet. It's a place called the Best Centre, and Olympic squads from all over the world go there to do training camp. So I do spend a bit of time there. It's a beautiful 50-meter open air pool. But to be honest, it's like what I'm training to do entails me swimming in the sea, and it's so much more beautiful, even with the jellyfish, and more interesting to swim in the ocean than it is to swim in a swimming pool with chlorine just hitting the wall every 50 meters. For me, I don't know, that's dull. I recently heard about a guy that did a 24-hour swim in a swimming pool, which to me surpasses anything I've ever done, because the boredom entailed there must be off the scale.
So if I was to ask you the differences, you'd just be talking about the environment that you're in. more than anything.
Yeah, and it's just more interesting. Yeah, like I find it quite boring swimming in the sea when it's very flat because it's dull. I actually like there to be some sort of energy in the water, and when you're swimming in waves, the time passes far more quickly than if you're swimming in water where it's just a mill pond. And also swimming, if you're swimming against the tide, it's you get that feeling of resistance, and you can sometimes I can be swimming on the spot for 2 hours, often training in the Solent. I might be swimming on exactly the same spot, like really busting a gut just to hold my position because the tide's running against me. And I might be looking at the same fishermen on the beach and they must be looking, thinking, what on earth is that woman doing? But it's actually really good training. And then obviously the other way around, swimming down the Solent with the tide with me, I've clocked 9 knots, going down the Western Solent, which is incredible to be in the water swimming and passing some of the marks where I sometimes think I ought to wear a helmet because I'm going at such speed down
For
there.
sure. And also, you're going faster than some sailing boats will ever dream of going. So that's incredible.
It's true, and it is the feeling of like energy when you're moving in the body of water like that is amazing. And for when you're having to factor in, I think the kind of tidal planning when your average speed is 1.2 knots, you really have to get exactly what's happening with the water, and if there's even a small eddy that can give you some help, it makes all the difference to us. Whereas in a bigger boat, it's still critical, but it's not quite got the same relevance. So no, it keeps us all definitely crunching the numbers. We've got some good spreadsheets that we've piled all the tidal data into. I think we could sell our Isle of Wight one for a lot of money.
Definitely. And physical actions speaks for itself. You're enduring this physical activity for so long. But how much of the psychological preparation do you do? Because it's a mind game. You're playing with yourself the whole time.
It is, and I think that is what my training is all about. Of course, it's important to have a level of fitness, that's a given. But actually, when I'm doing 10 and 12-hour training swims, I'm doing overnight swims, or I'm swimming for hours through jellyfish. What I'm doing is basically building my mental resilience. Is effectively what I'm doing. It's not necessarily about my physical fitness. It's me. Proving to myself that I can do it and I can keep going, so that when on the day, if I'm halfway between Ibiza and Denia and I've got another 45 kilometers to go and I'm swimming through yet more jellyfish, I can just have that strength, knowing that through my training I've done it time and time again, and I can keep going. Our campaign motto is never duck out, and my mascot is a rubber duck, and a massive rubber duck. It comes all the way around the world with me, and it drives my support team crazy because it always gets in the way. But for me, it's really important. Like, that whole message is that you just don't give up, and it's so clear when you're in the water. Basically, if you keep swimming and you don't give up, you will eventually get there. And I think that is what I'm constantly sort of learning and reminding myself of when I'm training.
Well, I don't have a single doubt that you're not going to get there, but I don't think you've sold this sport to me at all. I don't really think I'm going to be taking up endurance swimming. I'm going to leave that with you. But I am going to ask you just 2 final questions. And what we're really interested on WiSP Media is finding out, what are your 3 career highlights?
Well, definitely punching the pier at Ryde when I finished my 60-mile swim round the Isle of Wight was one definite one. Another one would be when I completed my first ever open water swim, which was around Brownsea Island in Poole Harbour. That was absolutely incredible. It was 6.5 miles, and prior to that I'd never done anything in the sea, and that was awesome. And another one actually is out of the water. I went to speak on International Women's Day at a girls' college in Sussex, and And it was just amazing talking to those girls, because the sport I do is one of the only sports in the world where women consistently outperform men. And I'm really proud to be an ambassador for that sport, because it's a sport that takes a great amount of mental and physical strength and endurance. And I think it's something that people wouldn't necessarily think women would be the best at. And I think it's brilliant talking to young people about that. So I think they would be three of my best moments.
Well, they sound good. And finally, what do you value most about being involved in sport?
I think because what I really value about doing what I do, and I know it's very unique and a lot of people wouldn't want to do it, but it just brings out the best in me, and it also brings out the best in all the people around me. And for me to spend my life doing what I do and knowing that that's the case, it couldn't really be better. So yeah, that's what I value most.
Well, Anna Wardley, you are certified nutter, and I'm very proud of what you're doing, and I wish you all the best for next year. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you.